Within the tree lines of Aokigahara lies a dark and brooding history. For many years, this place has been a key location for the people of Japan, and even tourists from around the world to come throughout time, going as far back as the 19th century with a common goal: the ending of their own lives within the sea of trees. Because of this history, that on this day, March 28th, 2012, I've come here to do the same. I didn't come to this decision lightly. I gave it some thought for a long time now and have wondered for even longer how I would go about doing it. I considered hanging myself, but then I thought, what if my neck doesn't break and I just hang there, choking for minutes or maybe hours? Drug overdose was another option, but I couldn't come to a conclusion on what kind of drug I would use, and worse, what if I underdosed and I didn't die? Then I'd be forced to face my friends and family and have to explain to them why I would do such a thing. Eventually, I decided that I would simply mortally wound myself with some form of serrated edged weaponry, which led me to the purchase of the razor I had brought with me today. However, the things that have happened within the past few hours have caused my plans to fall apart before my eyes, and now I find myself attempting to hide to save my own life rather than taking it. If that isn't dramatic irony, I don't know what is. You see, when I arrived here in the Sea of Trees known as Aokigahara, it was nearly sundown. I had decided to wait until this point in time in order to avoid the wandering eyes of any hikers or explorers that might be in the area during the daylight hours. When I arrived, I had a feeling that I was not alone, even though I couldn't see anyone else within what felt like miles of tree line around me. This feeling unsettled me, but I wouldn't allow a mere hunch that someone may possibly be nearby unnerve me and force me back into the depressing reality of my life that awaited me should I return unsuccessful to the real world. In fact, it could be said that the idea of a witness being nearby may have even steeled my efforts. As I continued on into the Sea of Trees, I saw the remains of those who had come before me earlier this year on the same mission. It pleased me to know that success was not as impossible as it seemed. However, as I passed by the dead bodies that hung from the trees around me, I once again felt as if others were watching me progress further into the forest. In fact, I could swear that I saw one of the hung men turn his head to watch me pass, but it couldn't have been real. They're all dead, just as I will soon be. Regardless of this fact, I couldn't shake the feeling of ethereal eyes gazing at me from every direction. By now the sun had set and the light had long surpassed the tops of the trees, the pitch darkness of the forest seeming to be never ending. This same darkness is what caused me to fall off of the beaten path that I had been following in hopes that I would arrive somewhere close to Wind Cave, so that I may see one last glimpse of what little beauty this world had to offer before I finally made the step to move on to the emptiness of death. Now I found myself stumbling around in the dark forest, unable to find any way to return to any of the paths within the forest. As I got further and further from the path, it seemed that I passed by more and more corpses. One of the bodies that I had passed by was like something akin to a scene from a horror movie I once saw. He was sprawled along the ground as though he was trying to crawl away from something. The even more disturbing part of this discovery was the condition of the body. It seemed as if he hadn't died more than a few days ago. And worse, something seemed to have either cut him at the waist or devoured his lower half. All that remained before me were the shattered remains of a torso and a look of pure anguish frozen on his face. Needless to say, the discovery of this body was a little more than I could handle, and I attempted to find my way out of the forest, now fearful of a fate worse than what I thought would be the sweet, silent embrace of death. As I turned to exit, I tried to retrace my steps, using landmarks I had seen up to now to find my way back to the long-lost path I had started on. However, I noticed something was amiss. It seemed as though a few of the bodies that were visibly hanging from the trees before were now missing. I brushed this off, assuming that it was just the mania from being lost setting in, until I heard something that resembled the sound of bones creaking from the sudden movement of joints that had been stationary for some time. not to mention the horrible smell that came with it. It smelled like 100 years of decomposition and, oddly enough, despair. I was frozen in place and had felt terror that overwhelmed my every nerve. I stood silently, making sure I had heard the sound at all or if it was just a figment of my imagination. When I heard it again, I felt my legs move before I was even aware of what was happening. I found myself sprinting through the tree lines in an attempt to get away from whatever it was that might be behind me. As I ran, I could see what I thought to be shadowy figures standing between the trees all around me, and once again I felt as though I was being watched. This was when I began to panic, my every muscle twitching and jerking from fear as I ran through the trees at speeds that would impress Usain Bolt himself. Off in the distance, I saw what looked like a person shambling towards the direction I was running and turned to avoid that thing before getting close enough for it to take notice of me. I tripped over a root that was jutting out the ground and fell head over foot down onto a pile of rocks, compact fracturing my leg just above my knee. I have been here for hours now, and it's just been as long since I heard the creaking sound that led me into this horrible and painful situation that has befallen me since. I'm currently trying to record this story before I pass out from the blood loss or worse. A warning to anyone who may find this recording against making the same mistake that I made: please turn back. Do not go into Aokigahara after nightfall. I can't explain whatever it is that's happening to me here in the sea of trees, but I fear it will be something worse than I could have ever had imagined before this day. My breathing has become labored, and the pain from the shattered bones in my leg is so excruciating that talking becomes harder and harder by the minute, but I know that if I don't finish out my warning, that the same thing or possibly worse may happen to the next ignorant person attempting to seek refuge in the sea of trees after nightfall. I hear leaves rustling and the sound of the creaking of bones and the smell of rot all around me. I expect that whatever I was running from has now caught up to me. Hopefully, I'll die before whatever it is gets to me first. As I look around, I can see the shape of a massive amount of bodies shambling towards me, and now I realize what happened to the man I saw on the ground earlier tonight. These things got to him before he could get away from them, and I'm more than likely going to suffer the same fate he did. I can only hope that my agony will be short-lived as the shambling corpses of the dead descend upon me. I have the razor that I brought handy, and will fight back with all that's in me. May God have mercy on my soul for ever having decided to come to this forsaken place. Last excerpt from a blood-splattered recording device found near a tree within Aokigahara next to a dried puddle of blood on March 31st, 2012. Not far from the device's location was the head of a man that seemed to have passed within the past 3 days. No connections have been found to indicate whether it belonged to the speaker of this excerpt.